Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we find ourselves in a rare moment of tranquility. So we'll start off with a nice leisurely stroll through Vistenza's Credenzas. Have a look around, take in the sights, grab anything that's not nailed down. And, of course, keep an eye out for anything that might hint at the inevitable darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Speaking of which... Oh, that's new. Ah, another Chartist pendant. I guess to make sure you don't miss out on it, since, depending on how you approach Denza's funeral, it can end up being destroyed. I guess that makes sense.
The machine god grants the insight.
Chains or ropes with shackles on the end can be seen in the water. Something white is also visible through the glimmer. A fragment of bone with marks made by sharp teeth. Yeah, see, and that is exactly why I didn't look at that last time around. Because if I'm reading that correctly, it strongly implies that this is where Vistenza disposes of bodies. Or prisoners. And yeah, that's not really something that would mesh well with our impromptu beach date with Cassia. I would have been slightly salty if that's the tone we had ended on.
Is there money to be made?
Aside from that, a fair bit of cargo.
Success is the only outcome I accept.
The chapel is built out of luxurious materials, but the holy place looks half abandoned. You cannot smell any burnt incense in the air. You see no seals of cleansing on the doors, and you hear no prayers. No human voices or vox recordings. And again, that is definitely unusual. Given the posh nature of this place, it's very unusual to find the temple
Let us not dawdle.
abandoned and neglected. Even Valin would at least keep the place properly maintained. He may have issues with the Ecclesiarchy, but he still respects the heck out of the Emperor himself. A decorative spire hastily turned into a watchtower is a sure sign of a turbulent situation on the agri-world. I mean, yeah, that's fair. Given circumstances, I can't really read too much into that. Hello, Layla. Okay, there's our entrance.
As it should be.
The governor's palace is opulent. The gilt finishes and plaster are updated regularly and frequently, it seems. Too frequently, even for a building situated on the coast. Intriguing. That would imply either
Keep your wits about you.
lavish excess, burning money that they don't have to, just because they can, or that there might be some sort of unexpected environmental or societal hazard
Always keep
that
your
necessitates
eye on
more
the
regular
prize.
upkeep. I mean, they don't let the common citizenry in here, so I can't imagine it's people stealing the gilding or anything. Seems more likely it's some sort of environmental factor. Man, there's a lot more containers around here than I remember from Alpha. I do remember seeing in the patch notes that they had increased the overall cargo yield throughout the game. So I guess that's what we're seeing here.
My success is an irrefutable certainty.
Honestly, that's something else I've also been wondering, is whether the new DLC will further increase that yield. It would be nice to get a bit more leeway on how many factions we can afford to build rep with. An otherworldly silence reigns under the arches of the gazebo. Perhaps a sound barrier generator is mounted in the dome. See, that's what I need. That would make it so much easier to get clean recordings. The ivory covering the archway gives off a delicate, heady fragrance, although you do not see any flowers. Okay, interesting. And I think we're done.
I always keep my options open.
So I think our main takeaways here are the neglected temple, signs of bodies being disposed of in the ocean, and potential excessive wear on the local structures. Obviously not much to go on just yet, but let's chat up Vistenza. Did you hear? A Vexen Goldino caught her husband with the servitors again. Gross. Your surprise sounds terribly feigned. Are you truly surprised to learn that the head of the Goldino family is seeking solace in such predictable places? Quite the opposite. I am appalled the old man hasn't come up with something more original since the incident at their last soiree. So the Goldino family is all kinds of freaky. Noted.
I always have a backup plan.
I am registering unconventionally high efficiency for the unit Exsellsior relative to her limited experience. The unit status is being upgraded.
Knowledge is the key to everything, is it not, esteemed Magos? I learned this wisdom from your fellow priests, and it has helped me many times.
Aw, you guys. Servant? Upon seeing you, the guard at the door lets out a frightened yelp, then doubles over in a low bow. Your lordship, the most honorable Valen von Valancius. The governor is awaiting you in her office, where she is protected by walls and guards. Would you prefer to meet with her alone or with your entourage? Yeah, considering what happened last time I met with her, I think I'll keep them with me. Thanks. Vistenza Janus Fiat Ab Aram Af Caronis is furiously swiping at a data slate, issuing commands into a gilded vox. Upon seeing you, she hurriedly puts away her devices, smooths her skirt, and drops into a deep curtsy. Your lordship, accept my abject apologies for the reprehensible stunt that spoiled the reception. Even in my worst nightmares, I could never have imagined... Yeah, I wouldn't sweat it. Pretty sure this is just part of being a rogue trader. This is like the 6th, 7th time this has happened to me this week. Thank you, your lordship. Believe me, I am infinitely sorry that the troubles of Janus have reached us even here. The most protected place on Janus. The companion standing next to Vistenza respectfully bows her head. She is doggedly trying not to turn her head toward you, but it is obvious she is watching you through her lowered lashes. Sure, why would you not? We are a glory to behold. For what it's worth, a couple of your wardens did avail themselves pretty well during the fight. The one fighting beside us, and there was one providing cover fire. Pretty decent shot, all things considered. Almost as good as me. You must be referring to Yurliette, our chief ally in the struggle against the rebels. I have turned a blind eye to her horrific mutations, given the undoubted advantages she brings. You see, Yurliette comes from the local degenerate stock of this world, and knows Janice like the back of her hand, so she has provided several leads as to where we can find bases and secret storehouses, although I admit that at times I am tempted to send her away from the estate. Her unnaturalness means that speaking with her always leaves me feeling uneasy. Such a gaunt, unfeminine figure. And so tall. If you wish to speak to Yurliette, you will find her outside in the orangery, most likely by the gazebo. She prefers to keep her distance from the others. Yeah, I can't imagine why. So, what exactly is happening here? Several months ago, uprisings broke out on Janice. I was not even notified at first. Griping worms are for wardens to worry about. Alas, I only learned of what was happening after the miscreants began targeting noble families. Vistenza shakes her head. And then it became apparent that what the Administratum's accounts had referred to as unrest were in fact organized attacks on infrastructure and society leaders. They have already brought 13 agri-complexes to a halt, and have now moved on to assassination attempts. My wardens are doggedly tracking down the rebels, but their leaders are slipping from our grasp yet again. I've got to say, Vistenza, you're not making the best first impression here. The rest of the planets in my protectorate need food. Can Janice fulfill its obligations under these circumstances? I risk angering you, your lordship, but this is nothing compared to shamelessly deceiving you. Let us consider the situation dispassionately. Even the most talented logistics expert of the Administratum are unable to guarantee stable tides when shuttles are wary of landing at the spaceport. And the terrified peasants are indulging a dangerous minority within their ranks. Until the usual order of things is restored on Janice, any trade is nigh impossible. Considering what has occurred, your visit is a true blessing. You see, Janice does not have its own fleet. We could organize a planet-wide search if we had ships at our disposal. Ships like yours, your lordship. Perhaps you will find a way to support your subjects in their hour of need? I'm sure even approximate coordinates would be sufficient to have the ground forces and ship's crew work together to hunt down the enemy. So, just to be clear, you're saying that you would like me to take care of the rebels for you? Not quite, your lordship. My wardens are crushing the lowly saboteurs across the planet relentlessly, Valen. But it will be for naught unless their nests are destroyed. Someone is controlling the riffraff who are perishing in thoughtless escapades, such as the one we witnessed today. And that someone could be hiding anywhere. You have resources and capabilities at your disposal, the likes of which I could never hope to possess. Your ship alone is an unequaled asset for tracking down criminals beyond the borders of my influence. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Well, fear not, Vistenza. Janice now has my personal and undivided attention. And I will track down anyone and everyone responsible for the unrest on my planet. And they will be dealt with. Concern appears in Vistenza's eyes. The resolve and valor of the von Valancius dynasty knows no bounds. I am immeasurably thankful for your help. Yeah, well, we'll see how that turns out. If any of those who had attacked the estate had survived, then perhaps they could have been a valuable source of information. But you made an example of them for the rest of the foolish rabble. Vistenza glances at the box. Incidentally, I did overhear the wardens talking about some kind of stranger in the area. Besides that, we still do not know who let those reprobates into the estate. The person who did it might also know something. I, as well as my retinue, are at your service. My secretary is checking the staff as we speak, and removing all traces of the attack from the estate. An esteemed Magos, who is responsible for agronomic efforts on the planet, is also here. He happened to be visiting this week to deliver his personal report. And, of course, there is my aide in the war against the rebels, Yerliette. I have no doubt she will be delighted to share her knowledge of Janus with your lordship. Noted. Thank you. Now, as to the original purpose of my visit, I brokered a deal with the Lord of Footfall to provide his station with much-needed provisions. I assume you can take care of it? Yes and no, your lordship. If the question is, can such an expansive and fertile world as this one feed a few thousand void rats? Of course it can. We lose more provisions to gnawing pests every cycle than those on Footfall could eat in their entire lives. But can we ship said provisions to Footfall? Not a chance. Any cargo shuttle that leaves the surface will be a target for attack. The rebels will not hesitate to bring it down, sending flaming debris over the capital. Our silos could become targets for sabotage. Food could be poisoned or mined. The logistics of transporting supplies to Footfall will only be possible once the uprising has been completely crushed. I see. That's disappointing. By the way, who is this standing next to you? Oh, one of my ladies-in-waiting, Amelia. Amelia performs secretarial duties and helps me remain in constant contact with those families who are most responsible for the productivity and prosperity of Janus. I trust my advisors implicitly, and over time, Amelia has become not merely a faithful companion, but almost my shadow. Losing her would be like losing my right hand. Vistenza laughs and gives Amelia an encouraging nod. Amelia drops into a low curtsy. To bathe in the light of your greatness is a true honor, rogue trader. Yeah, I'll bet. So, why don't you tell me a bit more about my planet? Vistenza leans forward. Janus is a remarkable world, both in terms of its vast potential and in terms of the work that was carried out to transform it into an agri-world. House Fiat has ruled on Janus for many generations, and each new governor has, without fail, contributed to the planet's taming. This world was once a wild planet, full of xenobeasts and utterly unsuitable for growing anything. To this day, despite our best efforts, Janus regularly rebels against us. Earthquakes, tsunamis, the emergence of new pests and weeds that invade the arable land. Sometimes I cannot help but think that this world is endowed with consciousness. The consciousness of a capricious and stubborn child who likes to spoil everything that we have achieved. Huh. Odd way to phrase it. So what exactly do you grow out here? Mainly Helican flintcorn and red turnip. Apart from that, in the southern hemisphere we have set aside vast tracts of land for the Grox population. And of course I cannot fail to mention the several thousand acres of tilled land given over to cultivating fermentable fruit, for personal use and limited export. Alright, well, thank you, Vistenza. This has been most informative. I'll leave you be. Right, so obviously she's trying to underplay it a bit, but apparently the rebellion is quite severe if it's completely paralyzed operations on the planet. Let's go have a chat with Yerliette, see what she has to say. She should be right by the gazebo. We know where that is?
I can see the agitation and fear of the servants beside me. But you, how do you manage to drown out their colors with mere words? Their dark hues dissolve immediately, and humility sets in.
I have always desired only respect, not fear. It is good to know that my efforts have not been in vain. Thank you for telling me.
Oh, Abby. So humble. Anyway, Yurliet. There she be.
Yurliet Lenevas greets you, Elantark.
The bizarre creature before you only vaguely resembles a typical human. An elongated body, slender limbs, pointed features. Every aspect of its appearance is unnatural and alien. The creature peers at you, its gaze unwavering. Yeah, so you're clearly not a mutant.
I have met souls like you before. You travel a path that offers you enlightenment. A rare gift among your limited kind.
Yurliet stares at you with her strange eyes, wearing an expression that is remarkably difficult to interpret. At last, she arches one eyebrow, so suddenly you almost miss it.
My soul is nothing kin to yours. Your kind call us Xenos, as if we are all as one. I came here to protect the Lilithon by assisting the governor against her enemies. Will you hear me, or be blinded to sense by your precepts?
Well, you haven't attacked me yet, so I guess that does buy you some leeway. Just keep your hands where I can see them. And don't forget, I've got a heavily armed kill squad at my back.
I have banished the shadow of doubt from your thoughts regarding my nature. Now you will answer my question. Why have you sought me out?
Yurliet inclines her head by an infinitesimal amount. So you're the one who was providing cover fire during the attempt on Vistenza's life?
I am Elantark. My hand parried the death promised to the ruler of these people, and I aided you in battle against the Lost Ones.
And I do appreciate that, but the question is, why?
This world is in distress. I wish to protect it from unnecessary suffering.
Assuming I can take you at your word, that's an admirable goal. Vicenza tells me you're the one who's been hunting the rebels for her. What can you tell me about them?
Only that they threaten the established order. There is much risk to this world should the ruler die.
Yurliet's face is unreadable, but you detect a strange tension in her voice, as though she is choosing her words carefully. Lying by omission? That's not a good sign. You know who's in charge?
There is a malevolence here that drives your kin down the path of violence.
Yurliet, I feel like you're being deliberately vague. You're sure you're here to help?
But you are not asking for help, Elantark. You are merely asking questions, the answers to which are either unimportant or wreathed in shadow. Explore this place. Speak to those who know.
She hesitates and adds quietly.
A simple task for you, and an insurmountable challenge for me, since my very appearance provokes fear and suspicion. When you learn anything, tell me. Perhaps then my answers will be helpful to your search.
Why do you keep calling me Alan Talk? My name's Valen, not Alan.
Because that is what you are. Elantark means stranger from the darkness amidst the stars. You descended on flame-winged machines in a dark time when the air of the planet is soaked in blood and pain. Will you be the one to bring peace to the Lilithon?
That depends. What's a Lilithon? Also, sorry to be blunt, but what are you even doing here? Why would an eldar come to a human world?
The world you call Janus was once created by the will of my kin. I have far more right to be on the Lilithon than any of you.
Okay, is it Janice or is it Janus? Come on, guys. Look, I'm not sure I entirely trust you, but I'd rather have you at my side than behind my back. If you're really interested in saving this planet, then you're welcome to tag along. At least until I get a read on your true intentions.
So be it. I will go with you.
She slowly draws out the words, then, gaze fixed on something beyond you, she falls silent. Good, that's a normal and perfectly trustworthy way to respond.
I am ready, Elantark. Let us go forth.
And welcome aboard, Yurliat. Which does mean, sadly, farewell, Argenta. At least as long as Yurliat's around. Which means we finally got our 4-operative party running. A bit excessive, perhaps, but, you know, it's the bit I decided to commit to, so here we are. Stats look pretty straightforward. Skills, yes, she is an expert in Xenos lore. That's what I was waiting for. And awareness, which is unfortunate because we already have a character who's now focused on that. And what we actually need is a character who can fill in on demolitions. We just lost our demo expert. But that solved easily enough. As of 20th level, we should be able to start cranking her demolition score pretty quickly. The alternative was to have Pass handle it, but he's already stretched pretty thin as it is. Anyway, one sec, whilst I get her set up. And we're back. Now, for better or worse, Yurliet is already locked in as a level 15 operative. We have control of her from here on, but everything before that is fixed. And her build is actually shockingly similar to Valen's, with a few notable, somewhat crucial exceptions. Most notably, she doesn't have Uncanny Sight, which is a shame because it would have been great to have quadruple stacking exploit on every enemy on the field, though she can still contribute with her normal canny sight, I suppose. That said, while she is pretty ideally set up to become an assassin, we've already gotten pretty redundant with 4 operatives and 3 grand strategists, so rather than doubling up on yet another class, we are actually going to mix things up, and we'll roll with Bounty Hunter. Which honestly on his face is kind of a tame class, but it does have 1 or 2 features that'll be particularly useful. Access to the demolition skill, for example, but, you know, a few other things as well. I do very much like Ensnare the Prey, which will be the second ability we'll pick up once we're a bit further up the level track. For now, though, just out of necessity, I think we need to grab Claim the Bounty to increase our number of shots per round. That aside, it's one of the only ways to gain extra charges of Hunt Down the Prey, which is otherwise limited to just 3 charges per fight. For our first full-fledged talent, we're going with a support skill. We'll pick up Catch. That adds a modest defense debuff to all of her attacks. Between Claim the Bounty and In My Sights, she can actually theoretically make up to 3 attacks per round. So while the effects of Catch are fleeting, she can set up her own kill shots or assist allies in striking particularly elusive foes. Also, now that I'm looking at this chart again, it's actually going to take slightly longer to get demo rolling than I thought. We have a common talent at 5, skill at 8. Yeah, things might get a bit rough for a while. Might have helped if I'd gone and done some filler content before we came here, but I was in a rush, so, you know. I'll just roll with the consequences of my hasty actions. It is nice to have an actual Xenos expert, though. And then, as for her ultimate, she picks up Wild Hunt, which essentially grants her multiple attacks equal to the number of prey she's marked, which under normal circumstances will be 1 to 3. A little tricky to set up, but auto hits and auto crits, can't really argue with that. Though yeah, I would say that Argenta definitely got the best of our advanced alts by a fairly wide margin. But, you know, we'll make do with what we've got. That's half the fun of this game, and a big part of the reason I decided to go with this goofy 4-op squad. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Rise to the top or get left in the dust.
Anyway, that's it for a yearlyette. Let's push on. Draped in a red cloak, the Magos' body barely looks human. Wires, tubes, and metal manipulators turn him into a whimsical machine, while implants hide his face behind a sinister mask. The tech priest intermittently dictates something in technolingua to the servo skull floating next to him, but at your approach, he falls silent and offers a reserved bow.
Greetings, your lordship. Lex Mechanic Vinzelex. How may I serve you?
Pascal and the Lex Mechanic exchange trills of binaric greetings. The series of sounds issued by Vinzelex sounds much longer and more deferential than those of Pascal. So tell me, Vinny, what do you do on Janus? The tech priest's mechanical voice comes from the speaker on his neck.
By the order of the Adeptus Mechanicus, I have been entrusted with the management of the Adeptus Administratum in order to catalog agronomic data and analyze information about the planet during the process of subjugating it to the will of the Imperium.
Be blessed, Tech Brother. Your diligence and the diligence of those like you turns anarchy into order, and bestows classification to knowledge.
One of Pascal's mechadendrites slightly touches the Lex Mechanic's body. The tech priest bows respectfully in return, clearly a little startled. So tell me about my planet. I'd like some details.
Initializing report. The planet's soil possesses a unique composition suitable for the re-engineering of the planet and the mass production of foodstuffs. Significant cultivation of the Eastern Hemisphere with the aim of improving production processes and logistics operations. Traces of xeno activity that do not pose an immediate threat to ongoing operations. Undesirable pathologies of flora and fauna have been noted, which may pose a threat in the short term.
What kind of pathologies are we talking about here? Something new?
Genetic and chemical pathologies, your lordship. Harmless species mutate and become aggressive, while plants change their chemical composition and become poisonous. This is happening more and more often, and if no action is taken, the ecosystem of the world will be irreparably disrupted.
The changes may be artificial. Has the possibility been considered that someone is manipulating the ecosystem to reduce our living space?
Not at all, Venerable Magos. Our tech comrades from the Magos biologists are humble workers, not warriors. They could not have come up with the thought of such a militant nature.
The mind must be open to all forms of knowledge. I order you to commence a check. In the event that your account of the indolence of their minds is confirmed, I will petition for the appropriate penance.
It is the Lelathan's wrath. Wrath that is becoming manifest in nature itself. In the workings of this world. May the gods preserve us. How did we not notice this sooner? Juliet glances at you before immediately looking away. How exactly is Vistenza dealing with these undesirable pathologies?
I have analyzed the genome of the affected species, and I am currently developing suppressor genes to make the planet's organisms resistant to pathology. But so far, I have not been able to solve the problem. Further exploration of the planet would perhaps speed up these processes, but the administrative apparatus has imposed a ban on expeditions that are not directly aimed at improving production.
I see. And the traces of Xeno activity? I mean, I can probably guess, but still.
According to data obtained during the initial survey, ruined structures of non-human origin were noted in different sectors of the planet, but I did not have the administrative capacity to study them in more detail. For now, I must defer the quest for knowledge.
The Lex mechanic speaks the last words with distinct envy, his eyes fixed on Magos Hanuman. Yeah, sucks. I've got some other questions for you.
I'm listening.
How many tech priests do we have on Janus? Always good to have you guys around. Just want to make sure we have enough.
According to the data stored in my cogitator, all infrastructure nodes for food harvesting and processing have their own contingent of technomats. The total number amounts to 253. Correction. Based on the latest data, the figure is 211 units.
Well, that's no good. Are things going okay for you and your people?
The current situation on the planet is assessed as stable. The progress of the prospects is assessed as encouraging.
Oh, good. You actually had me worried there for a sec. All right, Vinny. I'll check in with you later.
As you wish.
Interesting. So yeah, that does somewhat match up with what Vistenza was telling us about Janus seeming inherently resistant to the presence of humans. Though, of course, she tried to downplay it, while Vinny over there is taking it much more seriously. And based on Yurliet's claims, that is for good reason. Because apparently this may have been a former Eldar world. Hearing your footsteps, the elderly servant grabs an injector and stabs it into his arm. The area around the needle immediately starts turning black. You're too late, Vyats dogs. I'm the master of my own fate. But when he gets a better look at you, the man drops the injector in astonishment and seems poised to prostrate himself on the floor before you. It's you, your lordship. The God Emperor must have brought you here. I beg you, help the rebels and save Janus. He doubles up, hugging himself, and is racked by coughing that leaves his lips wet with blood. Forgive me, my lordship. If only I'd known it was you. My eyes deceived me. We have little time now, but I swear I'll tell you everything. Looking closely at the old man, the tech priest utters.
Nerve toxin. The inevitable cessation of vital functions is expected in no more than 60 seconds.
Silent clicks emitted by the visor indicate an ongoing pict recording. That seems pretty nervy, bud, but you do you, I guess. What was that? What did you inject yourself with? Deliverance. From what Vyat's dogs would do to me if they caught me. He forces a smile onto his face. I was given the vial along with the instructions about when to let our liberators into the estate. The old servant lets out a moan. The dark stain on his arm seems to creep through his veins, until his arms and neck are a latticework of black. The servant's breath quickens and becomes irregular. Looks like you don't have much time left. Say your piece, I'll listen. Your death won't be in vain. In the name of the Golden Throne, your lordship, show mercy on the humble workers, the salt of Janus. Save them. Vistenza Vyat, the untouchable governor and leader of the nobility, is creating something monstrous behind closed doors. She used the Imperium's interest as a smokescreen, and purports to be a scholar, but her actions are poisoning our planet. Did you know that the settlements that fail to pay their due tithes on time have been allowed to pay with people instead? They even deliver them to order, sometimes old folks, sometimes children. He lowers his voice to a whisper and leans toward you. I've seen those people. I've seen them being delivered to the estate, and then they're never seen or heard from again. They go into the secret rooms and they don't come out again, your lordship. Ever. Fresh meat to entertain the nobility. Some things never change, whether you're on my planet or anywhere in the righteous Imperium. Peasants who were taken to Urak 5 to serve House Orselio were never seen or heard from again either. They became loyal servants and toiled for the good of a great dynasty. Why should they ever return to their filthy, squalid abodes? Ugh, Cassia. The servant shakes and coughs violently. I'm not sure I'll last long enough to answer all your questions. Ah, crud. So it is limited. And I wasted our first question asking him what he injected himself with. The secret rooms. Tell me about those. Do you know where they are? Hidden chambers deep within the palace. I've never been inside, thankfully. The servants who are allowed in, the ones the governor trusts, they change. She changes them, pretties them up, defiles them. I see no shadows of deceit behind your words, and even so, I would have noticed. I know I would have noticed the signs of which you... Juliet's face tenses like a taut string, and doubt creeps into her expression. Except, whenever Vistenza hosts one of her dances at the palace, she sends me away to search for the rebels. Into the forests, far from human settlements. The old man starts to convulse, indicating that he is close to death. He raises his already unseeing eyes to you. Your lordship, if you'll permit a dying man to make one last request, don't tell anyone that I was the one who unlocked the doors. If you do, they'll go after my family, my home. I promise, as long as what you've told me is true, I'll keep your secret. Your family will be safe. Please, save us. Save Janice. The servant rasps violently and collapses on his side, racked with convulsions. Well, that's unfortunate. Though a lot more subdued than it was back in Alpha, if I recall correctly.
Is there money
Back
to
in
be
Alpha,
made?
he literally exploded after you finished talking to him. I'd say this is a smidge more somber. But yeah, based on what he told us, it certainly sounds like Vistenza may be dabbling in chaos worship. Slanesh, if I'm not mistaken, considering the comment about servants being prettied up and defiled. I imagine the human tributes are sacrifices, and then once they're done with them, they dispose of them on that beach, weighted down with chains until they're devoured by the increasingly aggressive sea life. Anyway, this feels like a good place to call it. We'll hit the pause button for now. I'll take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping, finish getting Juliet set up, and we will pick up here next time. I believe we do still have some talking ahead of us, but we should be back out in the field by the end of next episode. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible. including but not limited to Revenant, Alois, CrowkingLoR, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, V23, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
I am ready, Elantark. Let us go forth.